Welcome to our hymn where a guy wants to give blunts for free. At my birthday, I recently had my 37th birthday. In the state I reside, it's my constitutional rights to have marijuana recreationally. Decided I wanted to smoke a few blunts, so I went by my local gas station. To buy some White Owls, I go up to the counter and ask for a pack. The employee, I'll call him Dave, asks for my ID. I give it to him and he walks to the back wall and grabs them. Then he says in a very sarcastic tone, "Oh sorry buddy, I can't sell them to you. Good luck next time though." I'm confused, so I asked why. He tells me my license is expired. He gives it back, smirks, and says, "Sorry to ruin your birthday." I've worked with the public, including a gas station, so I know people are assholes and the job sucks, so I just calmly asked. "Really?" He laughed a little and said yes. I left empty-handed, and a little annoyed by the minor inconvenience inflicted upon me. On my day of birth. A few weeks later, I go to the same gas station for the same product, and Dave is working. He walks to the back wall, turns and asks, "Got your card? It's allergy season." And I'm really congested, so my hearing actually does suck certain times of the year. I wanted to be 100% sure I heard him correctly, so I said, "Excuse me." In that very sarcastic tone, he repeats what he said, but this time I definitely heard him, but I also heard the annoyance in his voice. So I reply, "My car." No, I didn't get any gas. This time, he lets out a very loud sigh, says ID. "Do you have your ID?" At that exact moment, a customer walked in, and the door made that dinging sound, so I took the opportunity to keep going with it and said, "I'm sorry buddy, I just can't hear you." He stomps over and asks again. I politely say yes, then proceed to take as long as humanly possible to dig my license out of my wallet. We proceed with the transaction without further incident. Now every time I go in and ask for those, I pretend I can't hear him, but do so in the most polite way possible. It seems to drive him crazy. Dave will now forever feel the plight of my petty revenge. Edit. A few details I forgot to add. I don't think they have to card every time in the state. The night shift guy and manager have never carded me. Dave has never carded my 30-year-old wife. I'm not wanting Dave to risk a fine or his job. It was a bummer he wouldn't sell to me. It's my fault with the license and all. It's more how he laughed and mocked me about it for seemingly no reason. After looking through the comments, I realize it had until the end of the day before it expired. Dave, you were wrong. Also, I'm joking when I say I'll do this forever. I thought that was obvious, but I suppose it wasn't. Entitled students thought they were playing me. They were mistakenly posted from our entitled people after someplace suggested it would be enjoyed here. I apologize for any typos. I'm on the phone and my autocorrect is drunk on power. So, a few years ago I was teaching a private urban religious college, since I only had my MS. I was thankful for the opportunity to teach and get the experience before I moved on for my PhD. The school usually had me teach accelerated night courses which were aimed on non-traditional learners, read adults going back to school after many years off. I loved my students and had a blast teaching them. I had some issues with a few here and there, but generally my experiences were really positive. But there was this one couple. Let's call them Hannah and Larry. That semester I had been asked to cover a more traditional course at the last minute. Rather than being accelerated, it met 3 times a week, for an hour, all semester. Furthermore, the last was very small, only about 4 students. Which would have been fine. Small classes can be great, and a paycheck was a paycheck. If it hadn't been for Hannah and Larry. You see, this couple had attendance issues, to put it mildly. They would show up to a class or two, and then just vanish for a week or more with no word. Just when I suspected they were gone for good, they'd show up. Usually with sole excuse or another medical issues, car problems, work, etc. Closing parenthesis. At first I tried to be sympathetic. I always have the attitude that life happens. And when it rains, it pours sometimes, but at a certain point, I began to grow a bit suspicious. They were selling me a story, okay. I was immediately suspicious. But I'm usually inclined to let things slide to a certain point. Same as my profs did for me. This was all the worse because of the small nature of the class. Every time I did prep for a session, assuming all 4 would be present, they'd skip and throw my plans off. But when I just accepted they would be gone, and prepare activities for 2 students, they'd show up. All of this would be frustrating but acceptable, if it weren't for 2 things. 1, whenever they showed up, these 2 would have an attitude about them, and just expect everyone to conform to their presence and bend to their will, and 2, they, of course, weren't doing any of the work. And these 2 factors came to a head as Hannah, who was the louder and more confident of the 2 of them, would all but demand extensions. The ability to hand in late work, etc., I'd give them, only for both her and Larry to blow the work off again. I like to be pretty accommodating to my students, within reason. But it quickly became obvious THST Hannah thought she was playing me, and could GRT whatever she wanted, and that couldn't stand. I have some level of pride and hate being seen as pushover. Now, I could have crushed them immediately, and just said, no more late work. But I was sure Hannah would just throw a fit and go to administration. I knew the admin would back me up. But it was a hassle I really didn't want. I was working on a second MS at this point and working 2 other jobs. I was frothing at the mouth busy at that point, and hadn't even planned on teaching THST semester. I only agreed because they needed me. And besides, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but I do have my limits. I was pissed at this point, but I also have a wicked to me sense of humor. Hannah wants to think she has me wrapped around her finger. Okay. Let her think that. I was gonna hand her enough rope to hang herself with. So, for the past few weeks, whenever she asked for an extension, I'd smile and say sure, and then chuckle when nothing came in. Every time, I wrote her and Larry emails, reminding them of the new date. Getting things in writing is key, kids. And then we arrived at the final. I hadn't seen the twosome in a few sessions, and was actually surprised to see them stumble in to take the test. They failed, of course. But what you gonna do? Hannah comes up to me in front of the class and asks for another extension. I put my best teacher voice on and said I was disappointed. But fine, life happens. However, I was posting grades the next weekend, so the absolute last minute I would accept any late was Friday at 11:59 p.m. The second it hit midnight, my books were closed. I asked if they both understood, and they summoned up a bit of solemnness when they assured me that they did. Good. I confirmed it in an email, and then sat back to grade the finals over the week. I mean, there were only 4. It wasn't that much work. I knew there was a risk they'd follow through, and I'd end up with a semester's worth of work to grade, but I was feeling pretty confident that that wasn't going to happen at this point. Friday night rolls around. I didn't work my other jobs that day, and my own schoolwork was done. So I decided to buy a few beers and kick back to play some video games and relax. I look down at a certain point and realize that it's midnight. I open my email, remind everyone THST the books are now closed if I give an extension. It's open to the whole class. I'm not playing favorites. Not that anyone else needed it. I cracked open another beer, let out my best supervillain laugh and went back to my game. Sunday comes around and I'm posting the final grades for the semester. I usually hate failing students, But I admit I had a smile on my face as I assigned Hannah and Larry their well-deserved Fs. 10 minutes after I hit save for the grades, I hear the familiar budding of my email going off, followed by another. Now, who could this be? It is, of course, Hannah and Larry. Larry's email can best be summed up as, "Oh my God, didn't you get my email with the work? I sent it on Friday." Hannah said the exact same thing. Now, it's obvious they're thinking they can get another day or two to get the work this way. After all, hadn't I been so pliant and naive all semester? Oh, the fools, the fools. They've played right into my hands, and this is the moment I've been waiting weeks for. I double-checked to make sure I hadn't missed emails from them. Just to be safe, I hadn't. And then I typed my response. No, I didn't. And I did just double-check after your last message. That's okay. Emails get lost sometime. At this point, I like to image Larry smiling while reading this. He'd won again. God, this professor is an idiot. I continued, so what I'm going to need you to do is go back into the email you sent me with the work. Just take a screenshot which has timestamp of the email and forward that to me along with the work. That'll prove you sent it on time. I then responded to Hannah's email saying the same thing. What was their response? Did their eyes widen as they realized they'd been held accountable for their actions? Did panic set in? Were there tears? Howls of regret? The gnashing of teeth and rending of hair? Sadly, I'll never know. I never heard from them again. They didn't even bother making another try. And me, well, I decided to buy some more beer that night to celebrate once again. Occasionally I'll tell my current students the tale. A humorous reminded that one, yes. I'm accommodating too, yes. I'm pretty laid back. But 3, I'm not an idiot. And don't try to play me. It usually gets a good laugh. And if some of those laughs sound a wee bit nervous, all the better.